A gruff, boisterous rock and roll singer, he had several songs in the late 1950s, some of which became true rock and roll classics and were re-recorded by British invasion artists. John Lennon, in particular, was a big fan of this singer and recorded several of his songs during his career. The centerpiece of today's video is all about Larry Williams. Now before we start, let's be sure to leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, and push that notification bell to be sure you won't miss out on any more content. Now, without further ado, let's cue that intro. Born Lawrence Eugene Williams on May 10, 1935 in New Orleans, Louisiana. As a child in New Orleans, Williams learned how to play piano. When he was a teenager, he and his family moved to Chicago, Illinois before relocating to Oakland, California, where he joined a local R&B group called the Lemon Drops. In 1954, when he was 19 years old, Williams returned to New Orleans and began working for his second cousin, singer Lloyd Price, as a valet. He played in the bands of Price, Roy Brown, and Percy Mayfield. In 1955, Williams met and developed a friendship with Little Richard, who was recording at the time in New Orleans. Price and Little Richard were both recording for Specialty Records. Price hired the teenager as his valet and introduced him to Robert Bumps Blackwell, the label's house producer. Soon, the label's owner, Art Roop, signed Williams to a solo recording contract. This arrangement was short-lived as Price was drafted in early 1954. Larry remained in New Orleans working with Roy Brown and Percy Mayfield and driving a limo for Fats Domino, but returned to Price following Lloyd's return at the beginning of 1956. Price resumed recording for Specialty but split with Art Roop, the label's owner, later in 1956 and founded his own label, KRC Records. Just after Specialty signed Larry Williams, Specialty lost Little Richard, who had been their biggest star and guaranteed hitmaker. Little Richard decided to abandon rock and roll for the ministry shortly after Williams cut his first single, a cover of Price's, Just Because.
But maybe I am asking far too much.
With Richard's backing band, Just Because peaked at number 11 on the R&B charts in the spring of 1957. After Richard left the label put all of its energy into making Williams a star, giving him an image makeover and a set of material ranging from hard R&B and rock and roll to ballads that were quite similar to Richard's hits. Here is Lloyd Price's version of the story, as told to Bill Dowell. Larry Williams lived at my house when he worked for me. He knew about Just Because. So when he saw the record hit around Baltimore and Washington, he had information. I never thought he'd try to double cross me. Because I had taken care of this guy, he asked me to loan him money so he could come out to LA to see his mother. Well, by him being my cousin, I understood that. Instead of him coming to California to see his mother, he went straight to Art Roop's office and told Roop he had written this song. Just Because, and of course Bumps Blackwell's side of the story is rather different. Williams' first post-Little Richard single was The Raucous, Short Fat Fanny, which shot to number 1 on the R&B charts and number 5 on the pop charts in the summer of 1957.
Jim Danny to the rescue. Short fat fantasy, my heart's desire.
It was followed in the fall by The Boney Maroney, which hit number 4 on the R&B charts and number 14 on the pop charts.
Making love underneath the apple tree.
Williams wasn't able to maintain that momentum, however. You Bug Me Baby,
You're playing we never know. You're close to me and I'm close to you. Ooh-wee, baby, is that?
and Dizzy Miss Lizzy.
Come on, kiss me, baby. Put your little hand.
His next 2 singles missed the R&B charts but became minor pop hits in late 1957 and early 1958. Despite the relative failure of these singles, Williams records were popular import goods in Britain, with the Beatles covering both sides of the Dizzy Miss Liz Lizzy. Despite the fact that Specialty released a steady stream of singles and one full-length album, Williams' commercial fortunes in America continued to fall. Larry Williams recorded the quintessential rock and roll exuberant, rhythmic, powerful, and wild from April of 1957 to March 1959. His best records were made in Hollywood with the legendary trio of Renee Hall, Plas Johnson, and Earl Palmer. Occasional visits to Cosmo Recording Studio in New Orleans produced less stunning but nonetheless intriguing outcomes. As Stuart Coleman puts it with mild understatement, towards the end of his tenure with Specialty, Larry Williams began devoting too much time to outside activities rather than concentrating on his next career move. In 1959, Williams was arrested for selling narcotics, which caused Specialty to drop him from the record label. It wasn't until the summer of 1961 that he was finally sentenced to 18 months in prison. In the meantime, he lived in Chicago and recorded for Chess, where he recorded 5 singles and an LP that never saw the light of day. Soon after his release in 1963, he did one session for Mercury and was subsequently hired as a talent scout for the Columbia subsidiary OK. By the mid-years, he had hooked up Johnny Guitar Watson in the duo cut several sides for OK Records in the mid and late 60s, including the top 40 R&B hits. Mercy, Mercy, Mercy was released in the spring of 1967.
Tell him about it, Watson. My baby and I.
And Nobody, which was recorded in early 1968. Williams also became a house producer for OK Records in 1966, although very few of his productions became hits. Between 1968 to 1978, Williams remained inactive, recording nothing and performing sparingly. In 1978, he released a funk album, That's Larry Williams, for Fantasy Records, which sold badly and garnered negative feedback. Williams enjoyed a lavish lifestyle, which is not totally explained by the income from the 3 Beatles covers. Allegedly, Williams' main sources of income were prostitutes and hard drugs. One of his clients was Little Richard, who wrote in his autobiography, "Larry Williams came to my house with a gun to shoot me. I had got some cocaine from him, arranged to pay later, and didn't show up because I was high. He had been with me at Specialty Records. I brought him to fame. We were very good friends, but he came to shoot me. That was probably the most fearful moment in my life. That is what drugs do to you." Williams ultimately demonstrated compassion for his longtime friend. Allegedly this, along with other causes, led to Little Richard's return to born-again Christianity and the ministry. On January 2nd, 1980, he was found unalived in his luxury house in Los Angeles from a self-inflicted wound to his head. Rumors persisted for years after his passing that he was unalived by someone else and not by his own due to his involvement in drugs, crime, and allegedly prostitution. Whether he was unalived by someone or he did it to himself, the truth has always remained unclear. To this day, no suspects were ever arrested or charged. Williams was survived by his wife and 6 kids. The big question is what Williams might have achieved as an artist if he had not led a dual existence. His Specialty Records remain among the most raucous rock and roll performances ever engraved in wax grooves. In 2012, Williams was inducted into the West Coast Blues Hall of Fame. In 2014, Williams was inducted into the New Orleans Music Hall of Fame. Now, before we go, I have a question for you all. What is your favorite song from Larry Williams?